Welcome back to Great Lakes Junction, everyone. What we're working on today, we have an old Singer sewing machine. And if I remember, it's been a long time since I've looked at this. Patented in Canada, August 1st, 1911. So it's 110 years since that patent date was done. Now this sewing machine does work. We picked it up many years ago at a yard sale. And it took a while to figure out how the thing works, but my wife made some curtains on this when we first got it and figured out how the thing works. So I know it does work. And it came just the way you see it there. Then at another yard sale one day, we found another Singer sewing machine. The machine itself was destroyed. There's things were bent on it and it certainly didn't operate. But I bought it just to get this top cover for the case. The end of it needs to be rebuilt. So the end of it's damaged quite badly. There's wood missing out of it, top and bottom both. All of the veneer is coming apart on it. So I want to fix this original end up if I can and remount it on that case. It has a metal clip on the back side and it locks into a metal clip on the back of this case. It's missing the one that goes in this piece of wood that's at the front, and I'm also missing the one in the front here. So I don't know if I'll be able to work anything out to make it clip on so that you can pick the sewing machine up by the handle or not. But at least I'll have a cover that's original. It is a Singer. It does fit that bottom case. And we'll be able to keep all these cobwebs and dust and stuff off of it. So that's the project for today, is to try and rebuild the end of this thing. Well, things are coming along great, and we've hit the jackpot. I don't know where I got the pieces from. I started cleaning the dust off and I opened this up, and in the bottom here I have the lock mechanism that was missing from the front of this cabinet. So I'll need to figure out now where to place that and cut the wood deep enough. This has to sit inside that front piece. It takes a triangle pointed key, which I don't have the key, but just trying to see how this worked. I just turned it with a screwdriver. I don't know if you can see it. When that mechanism pops up and then it moves over and catches on the plate that's missing on that. Now fortunately, I seem to have the plate also. It was in the bottom. So we can mount the plate in there. We'll make that fit into the end piece that we're going to make. There's some other pieces. Looks like this was just another handle off of something. I don't know where I got these pieces, but luckily I've got them. I'd forgotten about them. They were in the bottom of here. There's some extra pieces, different shaped feet for different kinds of sewing for the sewing machine. And this is what they call a shuttle. I'm not sure if I'm getting that on there. So they refer to this as a shuttle. This is where your bottom sewing bobbin sits inside, and there's one right there that sits inside that bottom shuttle, and it moves back and forth in here for the bottom thread. So I have to remember how all of that works again, and how to put thread on this bobbin. Somehow this is a bobbin winder here for that. And I know your spool of thread sits on here and somehow gets started. And when it's running, this little arm goes back and forth and winds the thread onto that bobbin for you. But once I get everything all cleaned up, we'll see if we can figure out how it works again. It's been a very long time since I've seen this thing run, and it was my wife who figured it all out the first time. So we'll get that spider nest out of there and we'll start cleaning everything up. The end of this, I think, has started to seize up. When I move that lever, that foot should drop down, and it's not. It's stuck in the position it's in. So we may have to take the end off and get some oil in there and get things freed up. But I'm really happy that we found that lock mechanism. I can probably fashion a key of some sort for that triangle shape on the end. I think I have an old skeleton key around the house somewheres, so I can probably file it all down and make it work for that. So we'll get things disassembled, we'll do some cleaning. I don't want to use any harsh chemicals on it because there's a lot of artwork decals on here, and I don't want to destroy that. They're marked up a little bit from the age, but for 110 years old, they're in amazing condition. So I don't want to use any harsh chemicals to clean that. I think we'll just use some warm soap and water for that part of it. Very fancy work that they've done on the different metal cover plates and stuff. Kind of vines and grapes and stuff hanging on them. I'll move the camera down here and you can see when you turn it, that shuttle I was talking about that moves back and forth for the lower bobbin there. Seems like a very simple mechanism, but I'm sure it took somebody, an engineer, to figure all that out, how to make the thread all work properly in that thing. Something's jamming up in the end in here. When I move that foot should set down and it's not. So something is stuck in there. We'll have to see if we can oil things up, see what's supposed to move and get it moving again. But you can see some of the artwork that's on there, and it's in relatively good shape, so that's why I didn't want to use anything harsh to try and scrub this up. So it's all over the thing. Lots of it. Very nice looking machine. We'll just take all these chrome covers off and we can try and polish them up, and it lets us get in to see things, to clean it, oil it properly. There's not a whole lot to take apart on it. There is a light bulb in there on that. I don't know if it works or not. So we'll do some more cleaning, some oiling, and see if we can get this foot to rest down the way it's supposed to, and then we'll come back to that top. I cut a little bit of wood for that end piece. This is going to go into the top, the curved part of the lid. I got another piece similar but longer for the bottom. I haven't put either of these in yet. I've just glued and clamped some of that loose veneer that was already on there. So I'm waiting for that glue to set up on that. So while it's setting over there, I'm working away at this. So I'm going to do a bit more cleaning and some oiling, try and get things freed up in there. I'll do some polishing on these pieces, and we'll come back to it. Okay, so we finally got everything freed up on it. It was seized up pretty good. I put it back together now. So in here, as I said, when I dropped this, that foot was not dropping down before. So we took the end plate off, and this screw here on the top around that shaft, it provides tension for that foot, for how tight it bites down on the fabric. So we removed that. There's a spring inside. We took the spring all out, and this shaft was seized right up. So we got some penetrating oil on it. We let it sit and work itself in around the shaft, and eventually it freed it up. It started moving. So then we oiled everything up in that end and put it back together. We tipped it over, and all of the moving parts inside on the bottom, we did the same thing. We put penetrating oil on them and let them sit for a bit. And then when we tried to start it up, the motor was trying to turn it, but I had to assist it by turning the wheel at the same time. So we kept doing that. We kept turning it while we had the penetrating oil soaking into stuff, and it started to get looser and looser until it started running. So once it was running on its own, we oiled those spots up, and then we turned our attention to this area. This is for winding thread onto that bobbin. So this little, looks like a little axle with a wheel on each end of it. That's what goes inside of that shuttle that sits down in the bottom in there. So this mechanism, you loosen this handle off here. That disengages the sewing machine. So when this wheel turns, you push, this whole mechanism moves. If I can get this, I'm trying to hold the camera and show you at the same time. So this whole thing swings, pivots in, and this rubber wheel up here runs on the back side of this wheel. So the motor turns this wheel, which turns this wheel, which turns all of this mechanism to wind the bobbin without driving the sewing machine. Once this knob is tightened back up and you pull this mechanism away, then when the motor's running, it actually runs the sewing machine. So we don't need the sewing machine running, we just need this spinning. I've got the foot pedal up here so I can just push on it with my hand, and you'll see how this works out. Okay, I think I'm going to call that enough thread on there. Now I got to remember how this goes back in the shuttle and how the shuttle goes in. And I'm not sure how to thread all of the thread in this thing, so it'll probably take me a bit to figure out how to thread everything. Then we'll see if we've got some scrap fabric around somewhere as we can run through it and see if it still sews. Okay, I think we're ready to try it, see if it works. I'm not sure how you run a sewing machine, but so this is just some, what do you call this, microfiber cloths that I have for cleaning the car and whatnot. So we're just going to see, you can see the end of this is open. It's sticking to my hand. And there's some place here to cut the thread. Doesn't work very well anymore. Not very sharp. Scissors. So there, it stitched that just fine. I can't even see the stitches on the back side. I think they just sunk into that material. But the old machine still works. And it still sews very strong. And that's some old thread I used. I don't know how strong the thread is, but we can still save my cleaning rag. So it works. So now I can turn my attention back to that wooden top for it and get it finished off. And then we'll find some place to store it. I think the old oil that was in there, years of sitting, it had just turned to a gum and everything was stuck. Nothing wanted to move. So we got that all freed up and we figured out how to thread everything. So it comes around this piece up here. The lighting is not really good. That knob there, the thread runs around it. This is for the tension. You can adjust the tension that it's pulling on the thread. Back up through an arm on the top, through that little eyelet that keeps it centered, and then down through the needle. So everything seems to work very well. So we'll turn our attention back to the case now and we'll work on the case. I've got the drill press out. This was the piece that I had cut that's going to go in the bottom of the front piece. And I need to put a slot in it for that lock mechanism to go in. So the drill bit, the width of it, is just enough to provide for the thickness of this thing. So I'm just going to drill a series of holes to make that slot in here to accept that lock. I just need to figure out the exact position that this lock needs to sit in so that when you put this top on and lock it, it's actually in the center where everything needs to line up. Okay, so what I've done here, so I had that other drill bit and I went through and just made a groove in there that was wide enough to accept that lock mechanism. Now I've traced out the end of where these are sitting, and I've changed the bit to what they call a Forstner bit, and all I want to do is go just deep enough to take the thickness of this piece of metal so that when it sits in and it's screwed in place, this metal and this wood are the same height so that they're flat. So the rest of that I'll just clean off with a chisel by hand, and then we'll see if that's deep enough for that metal piece to be flat. No, I think we're okay. I just need to clean it up a little bit so it's a little bit smoother with the chisel, and then I think that'll set right down to the height that we want. This pin that's sticking up on here, the base, when this top goes down in, there needs to be an alignment hole for that pin to go into. And the base plate that we have, I think, is the wrong one, because that pin wants to line up exactly where the screw is. So I can't drill any holes in here for that pin to line up in. So I'm not sure yet how I'm going to get around it, whether I have to get rid of the pin completely or try and drill another hole in this and relocate the pin and then drill a mating hole in that for it. But it's not going to work exactly where it is because it's exactly where the screw hole needs to be to hold this plate in place. So we'll do a bit more playing around with it. We'll figure out something. Okay, we have drum sander out now. So we've got our piece of wood all clamped in the bottom. We cut it all out for that lock mechanism to sit in. We had to move the hole over a little bit for the key lock mechanism itself. So I don't think it was the original one. It's not the one that came out of here, so it was slightly different size than what the original one likely was. The top piece of wood that I glued in, I just cut it off on some angles on the table saw. We're going to use the drum sander to finish getting that curve in it. And while I'm doing that, the back end was starting to separate also. So I've started to glue it up and clamp it and let it sit and dry. There's a couple more spots I need to glue and clamp yet. As it dries, I'll just keep moving around on it. So I'll do that for now. So I didn't have to worry about knowing exactly where to go because of this veneer that's on here was still the original shape. So I just have to sand down to it. I'm just about there. Be careful with these things. They chew the wood down very quickly. But I think that's it. There's some veneer missing on this, but this is on the inside, so I don't know if I'm going to worry about trying to patch that. That end has a chunk missing across the bottom. It's broke off on the outside. So that I may try and fix up. You can see where the veneer is missing down here on the bottom at this end. We still need to glue that, clamp that yet, but then I think afterwards we'll cut this off nice and straight. And I found a little piece of wooden veneer that was laying around here. So, and the grain just happens to be running in the proper direction to match up with the grain in this piece. So we'll cut that off nice and straight, cut a piece off of that to glue in on there, and then we'll try and match up the dark color of stain as close as we can so that it's not completely noticeable. It's this little triangle piece of wood they have glued on here. There was 4 of them, and it just gives you a little more gluing surface when you glue the end in. So I've got 3 more cut so that I can put them on here. Maybe I'll do that now, and then they can set and dry up also. They're a hard thing. You can't really clamp them because of them being on an angle. There's no flat surface to put the clamp onto. One of the things we do still have to work on yet, as I said, this lock mechanism is not the original. A very similar design, but not the original. So the plate on the end of the sewing machine base that it locks into, I need to cut the groove a little bit bigger in it for the lock to actually drop down in and catch. And that pin that I talked about that's for lining something up to keep it together, where it lands right on top of one of the screws, I tried to punch that pin out of that lock piece, this pin here, and it won't. It just started to bend the end. It just doesn't want to come out. So I'm going to have to grind it off. Okay, we took the clamps off. Now I'm looking at how I'm going to glue the end on. There was actually a couple small wooden dowels. I didn't notice them before. They were sticking out on the inside in here. And when I tapped them back with a hammer, they came right out from the outside. So they're bent like little sticks of wood. They're not like a dowel that you would buy today that's machine made and they're all nice and straight. But we'll try and put these back in after we get this all glued together. We'll drill the hole in there and see if we can put them back in or not. It's just made, this whole curved top is made out of about 3 layers of that veneer, and they're all starting to separate around and stuff in different places. So we've got a lot of gluing to try and do. So I want this flat piece of wood to extend beyond the piece that I've repaired out past the sides of this, so that I'm going to try and pull it together so it'll stretch this round carcass down tight so everything's even at the bottom. Sometimes this is where another pair of hands would be handy, but we're not going to put a lot of pressure on that yet because we're not lined up where we want to be. Okay, we're pretty much flush there at the top, so we'll tighten that one down. We're straight on that side. We're in a little bit further than I want to be on that side. think that's about as even as we're going to get all the way around.